Hello, everybody. I would say happy Saturday, but y'all know lately it's been taking a while to upload. So, hope your weekend is going well, whatever time you see this. So, let's get into it. So for our economic data this weekend, this week coming up, you don't have much on, well, anything really on Monday, and I believe that Monday is usually a no trade day. It may be good for scalps or some day trades, but usually when I give you guys the week list, it is not, you have to really wait to see how it sets up, and you don't have any data when Monday starts. So um, volatility may not be there, and it could chop. It often chops. So Tuesday is when we do start getting some data. We do have like a heavy data week next week. We got job openings at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. So these are things that may or may not move the market, but we always got to be aware of them. Wednesday, we have the ADP employment change, all of this stuff right here, GDP index, wholesale inventories. It's a bunch that's going to drop at 8:30. And then at 10 o'clock, we got the pending home sales. Thursday, we have job data as usual. But then there's also this PCE price index that's coming in as well. And then we have a speech. Uh, One of the feds is speaking at 9 o'clock, and then Chicago PMI at 9:45. That's a lot. Then on Friday, we have non-farm payrolls at 8:30. All right, so it's a lot that's going to be going on. Then this ISM manufacturing PMI at 10 o'clock. It's going to be a lot going on next week. So there may be some nice volatility that'll come into the market. And you'll see that after looking at this inside week that we had, where basically SPY just did a whole bunch of nothing. All right, so let's go through our normal things. Looking at the VIX, take this off. All right, looking at the VIX. So the VIX is now in a shoulder area of an inverse head and shoulders here on the week. So it is caught in between these EMAs, and it could definitely go either way. But the bottom of that shoulder area is going to be about 1545. It could come down even to about 1479 and still be in that shoulder area. So what I'm saying here is we could also come down and then even reverse an outside week, or it could just come on down. So either way, we are ready for whatever the VIX brings. Well, one thing I do want to point out is that it's almost a head and shoulders here. So kind of have to see how it acts here. If it is in a channel right now, and if it breaks down and breaks below this, it'll break this structure where it was kind of slightly moving up. And as you can see, we've been making higher highs on the short term. So I have to see if it respects this channel. It rejected the 200 here, so it may want to try to get up there again. We just have to see what it does. Looking at the dollar has had a few good weeks, honestly. It has a PMG set up here on the weekly, but it has broken above this 200 on the week and held, and on the daily. You see it kind of whipped a lot right there, and then it came up and found some support. So, and then the 8 has finally crossed the 200, which is a longer term bullish sign. So the dollar is looking pretty decent. Oh, one thing I also want to remind you guys of is that we only have about 4 days of month left on the month. So if you are looking at monthly signals, just remember to see if it can finish it in the next 4 days. But I really do think that with August has been somewhat choppy, and it's just setting up for a bearish September. I'm really expecting a bloody September. Of course, we're always ready either way, but the charts, we've been seeing the bulls have been buying the dip. The bulls have been very weak lately, and the bears have been more in control, and we're looking at more of a short the rip scenario right now. So that doesn't mean that we're going to lose all gains. It just means that September may be a little bloody. We might have at least some type of retracement. But if you think about it, we pushed for months we were green for months. So even if we have a bloody September, we could still just retrace half of this move here, which would be like right here. Okay, half of that move, and we could still move from there. And if you look at it on the monthly, that could be a head. So this shoulder, it can come all the way down here. Nasdaq retraced to about 13,200, and it could still boom from there, and that would just have been a huge inverted head and shoulders. Kind of sort of. This isn't really a shoulder area, but yeah. So we'll just take it as we go. Right now we have a somewhat shooter on the week, but it was green. The bulls kind of held it a little bit, but if you look at it on the weekly, we are in still this shoulder area over here. So we hit the top of it, 15,295. Bottom of it's going to be 14,581. So we could chop in here another week before we actually let it go. This shoulder area lasted about a month, and so we're the second week in. Might have a couple more weeks before we actually drop. But looking at it on the daily, printed somewhat of a hammer here. So it's kind of similar to last week when we were here. We knew that we would correct up some, and then we corrected a lot. NVIDIA saved the market a little bit, and then we sold off right before Jackson Hole. Jackson Hole just did a whole lot of nothing. So interesting to see what we do here. We are, again, still in this daily shoulder as well. And this shoulder over here lasted really about 3 weeks. I was talking to Kiki about that. So we are probably a week and a half into this shoulder, so we can still come back up and chop if we wanted to before we actually drop. But we do have this huge head and shoulders set up. So I am, for the most part, bearish. And I believe we are still in that short the rip mode. All right, looking at the Dow. It's not a whole lot going on here except a possible head. So it's come down. This would be your shoulder area, and that would be your head area. So if this stays below, let's say 346, then we can go in between 346 and 337. Those would be the levels that I think it would chop in between to make a shoulder here before it dropped. Now, if we did that and it dropped, and then Nasdaq dropped, Q's dropped, SPY, then we'll see all of those head and shoulders playing out. On the daily, you do have more of a head and shoulders here. This entire area, though, is this shoulder area. So you got this shoulder, the head, and now we're in the shoulder area. So that's the top of it. Bottom of it is right about around this 200. And it could still chop in there, and then it may want to come down and fill this gap. But this is basically an area that is chopped around in before. Remember, we were watching this. We've been watching it for a while. It comes up, it chops in that area, comes up, chops in the area. Now it's coming down, may chop in this area before it comes down again, chop in the area, and then whatever it decides to do from there. Small caps kind of look the same. Got what's ahead here, and it's possibly in the shoulder area. So you may get a 2 up here where it can even come up to about 189, or it can lose this and come on down. Looking at it on a daily, it's the same thing. We are still in this shoulder area. There's your whole head. But IWM, the difference here is it is fighting right around the 200. So it's trying to stay above it, but this is, I think, a classic example of how the bears took control. All right. You can see here that the bears took control here. The bulls tried to step in. Each time they stepped in, it's wicked. Only once in the last 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, no, we got to count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days has it closed above the 200. And now this 8 is starting to cross below. So this could get pretty ugly for IWM if it loses this level. I think it's a really strong level here at this 182, which, if you remember, that was the same level way back here that we were trying to get to with all of this chop, and it finally got through it, and then it busts through it really hard. So now it's just right back there. So if it loses that level, then it's going to go back into this chop area as well. The Qs, again, looking like Nasdaq We are in a weekly shoulder. It's also a daily shoulder as well. Have not quite a shooter here, but it's green on the week. And then somewhat a hammer on the day, but still in this entire shoulder area. So this is a 3-week area. These are the levels in between 372 and about 354 is where we could possibly chop. You see here, it sort of broke through there to the TTO and came back up as a corrective move. But if you fib this really from here to here, it didn't quite, well, yes, I think that is about halfway. It just really corrected halfway. Yep. Oh, I hit it on the head, y'all. It corrected halfway and then rejected. And I mean hard. So after that, that long day, we did print this hammer, but we rejected at these EMAs here. So interesting to see what this may do. Again, we are still in this shoulder area, so it could just chop in here, especially this week with all that data that could make for a choppy market. But otherwise we could do a 2 up, 2 down and come down to this 355. That 355 level is a level that it is rejected a couple of times. So if it loses that, then good night. SPY has the inside week, which is the one that actually has an actionable signal here. It's not much range there though. That 435 level would have to lose, and then we can get to that 433. We know that that's a strong area though, but once it loses that, then we might be able to get to this 431. That's the entire shoulder area here, about 430 actually. From 430 to about 445-ish. Yeah, right there is that shoulder area for this this weekly head and shoulder that we see here. On the daily, it's kind of the same thing. You see, it's a larger shoulder because at first we were looking at this head and shoulders played out, and then now we're in a even larger head and shoulders on the week. Okay, but remember what I was showing you guys as far as the inverted head and shoulders. This is a shoulder area. That's your head. So this could be the shoulder area. So this can come all the way down even to 412, and that structure would still be valid. I am actually looking for 420. About 420 to with this head and shoulders to play out. But again, it can come all the way down here to this 412 if it wants to, and still move to the upside, and we can see higher prices. And we know that our highs are going to be about 464 once we do that. So mark those 420, and if we really violently, aggressively bounce from there, it could do something like this. Say that's September, boom, October, and then it can boom from there. Because remember, last year October is when we really kind of turned in the market and we kind of got bullish from there. So it would make sense for us to really correct, have a nice correction, and then move if we wanted to. All right, Apple has, look at this huge gap on the daily that it has. That's going to be your first target for any upside. It's first going to be this TTO here at 187.55, and then that gap fill at 190. There is somewhat an inverted head and shoulders here on the daily. So with this green 2 down, you could at least correct up to the top of the shoulder, 181. It may reject there, but if it does push through, then you can start targeting these gap fills. And of course, if Apple moves, then that is going to definitely push the indices. Okay, so Apple kind of got most of its correction almost to the 200, but it also could almost be a double top there if it wanted to fall. We do have this inverted head though, so that's what gives me pause. But we also have gaps to the bottom to fill. That 167.06 ish, it will be my first target. If you see this gap here, this tiny gap is where it filled, and then now it's kind of chopping around. So if it holds and it goes back to the upside, then we have our targets. Mindful of these EMAs because this 30 right here is crossing the 50. But yeah, those are your targets there. Microsoft. You had basically you had 4 red weeks in a row, or really 5 red weeks in a row, and then this may have been a corrective week. Not to say we couldn't correct more, but we did correct really about 50% of that move, maybe about 40%, 38% or something like that, and so we could still move down. Now that would be your head, and then this is the entire shoulder area. So looking at it on a daily, see your shoulder. So watch Microsoft and Apple, because if Microsoft falls and Apple goes, that could also make for mixed results in the market. So, but you see that these are below their EMAs. This on the daily is, that could almost be your head. Could chop a little bit here before it makes its way down to the 200. So 300 on Microsoft, and then possibly that gap fill to 81.63. You look at it on a monthly. Again, it would do the same thing. If it came down to that 281 or even this 275-ish, 271, that would still have the structure for an inverted head and shoulders. Your shoulder is about right there, about here, between 282 and 270 for it to hold that structure. But it would need that corrective activity for it to make newer highs. Okay, a couple things I did want to point out real quick. We're going to just go through real quick so you can see what they're looking like on their 2-week, because we do have a new 2-week bar starting tomorrow. So you know that, I'm sorry, starting on Monday, whatever day I get this up. But you know that I like the 2 weeks for swings. Of course, like I said, let them set up on Monday, but then, and then it may take a while to trigger it, but those are good for swings, and make sure you give them some time. So it's kind of a gravestone doji almost here on the VIX, which is having me think we may see some more bullish activity in the market. So it could come down here to this 1348. The DXY does not have a setup there. Same with the NASDAQ or the Dow. None of these have really actionable signals. There's the Qs, SPY. Apple has somewhat of a morning star doji here. So if it does do a 2 up, you can target at least that gap that we were talking about before. Microsoft, there's a doji there, so that's just not an actionable signal. And then Tesla does have a hammer here on the 2-week. So if this can break above that 240.45, it may be able to come up here to this 267, 260, 270 area. All right, so keep an eye on Tesla. And then Apple, or I already said Apple. Out of the sectors, XLV is not an actionable signal, but you have a double inside week here. So this is a channel that it's in. I'm looking to see, I'm wondering how it's going to act from here. Okay, and we know that double inside weeks, or double inside 2 weeks, basically is like an inside month. So it can lead to a breakout in either direction. So you would be looking, like we were just looking at Johnson & Johnson, I believe it was. Last week, I was telling y'all about that, and it was similar, and it broke down, which is really interesting. And then, so XLV has that 2-week double inside, but then also on the weekly you have a rev strat. So you see it stopped right at the bottom of that channel there, which is a little bit off because this is on the 2-week. So it could rev strat and boom out of there. You almost got, it's almost like a bull flag. All right, and then XLE has an inside week. So not quite sure what this is going to do, but that is an actionable signal if it does a 212 in either direction. All right, so looking at the sectors, I told you which ones had the 2-week setup, so I'm not going to just go through that. But XLY, you got your head here. and we are in the shoulder area with an inside week. So possibly an actionable signal. Find your favorite consumer discretionary stock and see if it triggers to the downside or up. You may be able to catch a better move. Whichever way it goes, it's still in. This is going to be your shoulder area, and this is your head. So as long as it keeps that structure, even if you see like bullish activity, if it doesn't break 170, then I would stay bearish because it's just in that shoulder area. That's so wild on the day. So it's looking just like how the Qs look basically. Had that corrective activity, died, and then printed almost a hammer on the day. So XLK technology looks like the Qs in the shoulder area. Almost a hammer on the day. XLF, not really doing much here. I mean, it's basically had 5 red weeks and it found some support here, but it's really in between EMAs, so not actionable for me. XLF, yes. XLC, nothing really here. Again, you do have your head here and your shoulder, so it's in a shoulder area. It's gonna be a quick video because all of these look the same. We're still in the shoulder area. Even though you see this corrective activity, you see that it got rejected hard on Thursday. That should let you know that the bears are, for the most part, in control. Once you start understanding how price moves, you know, we expected this corrective activity, and then the bears came in just like we expected as well. Based off the structure that we know, we are in a shoulder area. Shoulder, head, shoulder. Already talked about XLE, XLU. Now, XLU is a little bit interesting here because we do have a TTO. It does have more targets if it wants. It's 60, 35. However, it did take these folks out and these folks and then reverse. So it may just correct up to these EMAs. You know, the last time it did this TTO, it came all the way back up there. So it could still correct up here and still keep dying. You can tell that it's in a downtrend though. You can see that it's making lower highs. So if it does correct, it may do, like I said, it do a little bit, but I wouldn't expect or be bullish on this until it broke above and made a higher high. Looking at it on a daily as well, you can tell it's in the downtrend because it's under the 200. So your favorite utility stock may still be dying. It's just basing right now. As you can see on this daily, it's really just basing for a breakout in one direction or the other. XLI gave you a head, and now we're in a shoulder area. On the daily, it's just really basing, most likely for the drop, because that's your shoulder. That's what a shoulder does. It bases. XLV, we talked about already. XLP, you got a fresh TTO here, so you may get some corrective activity to the upside, but it is basically in a downtrend for the moment. Well, because we fought here around the 200, broke above shortly, and then died. So now that we've taken these folks out, is basing here for either to drop more or to maybe correct up to the upside. Real estate also in a downtrend. It's not really anything going on. This is a chop area. All right, XLB found some support here. So it did have 3 red weeks, found some support and didn't really do much. So it could correct up here to the top of the shoulder area. Y'all see the shoulder, head, shoulder, or it can lose that and come on down. But you can see it's right here at the 200 and it's basing. See the base, most likely basing for a drop because you can see shoulder, head, shoulder. So it can come all the way up here to this 82.69 and still be valid for that shoulder area. XOP actually looks okay. It almost did a double top here, but we are in a longer term head and shoulder area. So it can really correct all the way down here to the 200, even 132, and still keep going. It did break out of this downtrend though. So we made a higher high and then corrected. So if it continues, then you may see some control from the bulls there. But you can definitely see that it corrected and moved up. Now here on the daily though, we do have somewhat of a double top. So kind of got an M there. And then you got the hammer counter shooter that Rob used to say. And it filled the gap and it rejected. So interesting to see what it does from there. Again, it broke out of this downtrend. So then it came down, did a TTO, and it may have found support. So I have to see what that does. XRT, 4 red weeks in a row, so it's not an actionable signal there. Same with Jets. It had its run. Summer's over, and it's dying. Lithium battery has an inside week here, and it does still have room for it to go down, and it has a gap to the upside, so you can play this either way. I kind of like it better to the upside because it may actually go for this gap after it takes these folks out. SOXL, so we're in our shoulder area. We have our head here, and now we're in the shoulder area. It's almost a gravestone doji here though, so if it loses this 1932, it may come on down to this 1547. It's right at the 200 though, so losing that will be critical for it. IYT is transportation, looking just like Jets. Summer is over, and it is coming down. This is making a head here, so it can come down some more and then shoulder, and then it may die. And then China, still not doing anything. This is just not really doing much at all. At all. Alrighty, so for y'all weekly list, I don't have much. I have really been focusing on SPY, Qs, and IWM. You know, I love AMD on Thursdays or some type of chip play on Thursdays and maybe energy. But I have really been focused. So I have not been doing a whole lot of swings. And then right now, I think us being at the end of the month, it's not really a whole lot going on where we want to swing yet going into September, unless it's set up there. So now here you do have somewhat, these are some evening stars that I have. Somewhat an evening star on the week. It's a short-term downtrend, so if it does want to reverse and it breaks to the upside, then IWM may be a nice play. XLF is the same setup. This may be an evening star for this short-term downtrend. So we may see some corrective activity, which will be supported by the way the VIX was looking if the VIX does that inside down on the week. All right, and then XLV, we already talked about. You have a possible rev strat here. This is a doji, so it's no confirmation, but if the bulls take control and break above this 134, then we can see it come up to this 136. So your favorite healthcare stock may actually break out of this channel and break up. CRM also has an inside week, and if you remember, it had triggered the month, the rev strat on the month, and it hit the first target and came back in. So looking to see if it can still make that 191.47. It can do it in the 4 days if we were red, and it may not, but those we are mindful of the larger term. So if it breaks to the upside, then you know we're also in this shoulder area. That's your head. So it could also break up to even this 217 or more. All right, Tesla, we talked about that 2-week hammer that it had. You have your head here, so it could correct to the upside and still give us a shoulder. And then remember on the month, we do still have, it could still come down to 200 if it wants to die all week. UAL still has a little bit more to go, 47.31, and not really an actionable signal here because it did our 2 down, but it's a shooter. So if you wanted to catch that little rest of that, then it could go. There's no actionable signal here on the weekly with AMD, but on the month, remember it has triggered that 212 down. So it fought at 100. It found really good support here at this 100, which, as you can see, we rejected from 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And even this is basically a strong level, that 100. So if it loses 100, good night, AMD. All right, so I will definitely be watching that close this week. Then some of our quarter ones that we've been watching. HD has come all the way in, but remember, we do still have one more month, about 5 weeks of quarter left, if it wants to go to the upside. So watch it. What you really want to look for with HD is a TTO and a reversal. So like this is a whole entire shoulder area. You got your head. It could come down all the way down to this shoulder area where this gap is and still reverse to the upside. It may need some news or something like that. But you would want to see something like maybe a correction with a hammer and then a reversal. You want to catch that reversal back into full time frame continuity to catch it to the upside if it's going to go. All right, and then COP is kind of the same thing. It still does have room to go to the upside. So you just want to catch whatever reversal, which really that was it right here. You got your base right here. And then you see a TTL and reversal, but it ended here. If it can break out from here, that's when you go ahead and take it to the upside. Remember, you would look for possibly something on the daily. Yeah, see how it's respecting this 8. A break above and out is what you would look for. We got our higher lows here. So as long as it doesn't break below this 114, you should be good. It is really struggling here at this 118 though. So be mindful of that level as well. And then a couple of inside weeks, of course, Meta. We know that we're in our shoulder area. It could shoulder some more or it could die. It could also correct to the upside. So Meta may be a decent play. And then Walmart as well. That's a pretty small inside week. So if it moves to the upside, it's a nice range. Not as much range on the downside, but it's still some. And then this could somewhat be a head here, and this may be a shoulder. So I'm really excited for September. I'm thinking that we may actually see some blood in the streets, especially after this week. This week may again be choppy, but then we may be able to see a solid direction where the bulls actually, the bulls actually let it go, because that's, I think, contributes to chop is when bulls and bears are fighting. You kind of saw that this week where the bulls really took control and it ripped on Wednesday, and then the bears took control on Thursday and it ripped in the other direction. Erased all the gains. So be mindful of that, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend and trade safe. Bye.